Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It's great to be here. We've got a really interesting and different interview for you today. We've got a gentleman who really made his career on Amazon, self-publishing. I mean, there's probably less than 25 people in the world that have done what he's done on Amazon. He's a best-selling author, and we'll let him talk about how he has basically managed that. But in the meantime, I just want to really welcome to the show Michael Grumley. And as our viewers know, I like to start with a little different beginning. I would like to talk to you about your childhood. And what I
Okay.
would like to know is if you feel your childhood contributed to you becoming a writer. Were you an introverted kid, extroverted? Were you an athlete? Did you read a lot? Did you have imaginary friends? If you did, we want to know their names. So talk to us about it.
Well, that's a good question. I've never gotten that before. Yeah, I'm sure that my childhood played a role. I was kind of a mix. I was introverted for sure, shy. I was kind of the funny kid. Fairly athletic. I did some sports, but I wasn't a superstar. I was kind of the jack of all trades. I think I'd always wanted to be an author. I remember when I was about 10, I wrote a story. My very first story. I wrote it down on a single piece of paper, and I wrote for my mom. And it was about a little bionic rat named Ben. And I think I still have that in a photo album or something. And it was really sweet. And I don't know, just some silly thing, but she came home and she'd read it, and she says, "Oh, this is really great. Maybe you'll be an author someday, right?" So it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And then something else kind of happened. When I was a teenager, I started reading more, science fiction, which is, Heinlein and, all these stories. And I read an author named Jack Chalker. Some people might remember that name. He's passed away. And he was a pretty prolific science fiction writer. And he actually wrote some really interesting books that I thought were really ingenious. And this is back in the early 90s. I don't know if you guys remember AOL, the
Oh,
early
yeah.
AOL. Before AOL, there was an online system called CompuServe.
Mhm.
And it was like the very early, it was all text-based and stuff. And I was working at the phone company, and we had access to this. And I'm like, I wonder if, because this guy Jack Chalker, he wrote science fiction. He wrote about, universal computer, systems, and and I'm like, I wonder if he would ever be on something like CompuServe. And so I did a search, and there was a Jack Chalker located, I think it's like in New Jersey or something. And I said, "Hey, are you by chance the science fiction writer?" And he replied, he goes, "Yeah, that's me." And I almost fell out of my chair. At the time, he was like my favorite writer. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And so I write back and said, "Listen, I'm such a huge fan. I mean, I don't want to be crazy. I don't want to know what you had for breakfast or anything, but I mean, I've always kind of dreamed of being a writer. It just seems like such an awesome thing. I was wondering if you could tell me what it's like from the other side." And he wrote back and he said something really interesting. He says, "It's a very lonely life." He says, "You're only as good." Now, this is back before Amazon, Kindle, the self-publishing wave. It was all traditional. And he says, "You're only as good as your previous book." And he says there's a lot of other writers that he knew that, would have to file bankruptcy while they're waiting for a $100,000 check from the publisher. Because at that time, they only paid you like every 6 months. And he said, so because of that, a lot of, especially science fiction writers, also had full-time jobs, right? So they might be like a math teacher and then they'd write on the side. Um, and I said, wow. Anyway, so we exchanged a couple of emails. And I said, it seems to me like if you write a book and you put it out there, it's almost kind of almost, I don't know, a wisp of immortality. I mean, some of these books are around forever, right? And he says, actually, it's more like a child that goes off to college. where you do your best and then they go off and then you kind of hope for the best. So it was some, and so his advice in the end was, I think that he was a full-time writer, but he had a wife who worked, and he says, so, you know, he said, find a woman you love and, you know, maybe you guys can balance each other out in terms of, income and that sort of thing. It was a really interesting insight from the other side that I had not expected. It was sobering, and I have to say that it's some of that's borne out because as a writer, it can be a little lonely, right? I mean, you're
Mhm.
by yourself. You're doing this all by yourself, locked in a room or a chair or wherever you're doing it. So I mean, the freedom is wonderful, but the isolation, it takes some getting used to. So anyway, I don't know if that kind of
So what I draw from that is find a sugar mama.
right, exactly. That's exactly right. That is
And
exactly
then
right.
work it out.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's kind of what he was hinting at, I
yeah.
think.
So what's your process when you have a story? What, people always ask, where do your ideas come from? And the answer to that's everywhere. But let's say you have a concept for a story. What's the first thing to you? Do you jump into an outline? Do you jump into notes? Or do you jump into just start
So
writing?
I just open a Word document and close my eyes and start typing as fast as I can, and I hope for the best.
Exactly.
I'm a little bit of a mix. I think I'd read once that Lee Child doesn't really do outlining, that
Right.
he kind of free flowing. A lot of people I've talked to do crazy outlining. I've actually talked to people in these writer groups, and I don't know if this is sustainable. This might just be kind of a crazy whim that they had where they actually wrote the last chapter first. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably because people have this kind of image in their head of how, this dramatic ending or this dramatic scene, and maybe that's all they kind of know, and then they have to kind of figure things out. I read once that James Cameron, when he did Terminator, the Terminator movie, the whole concept started from, I think it was like a dream or some vision he had around this metal skeleton walking out of this kind of, this cloud of flame. Uh, and towards the end, that actually kind of happened, and then he kind
Yeah.
of constructed the story around that. And authors do that a lot. At least I do. I suspect a lot of authors will have things in their, scenes, parts, plots, and then they have to construct forward and backwards, right? So a lot of times, if you have a plot and you're like, oh, I really want this to happen in the scene, that'd be really cool. You have to then start kind of building backwards towards how that happens in a realistic way. So for me, it's my process is I outline about the first third of the book. And I do it very lightly. I might do a few sentences per chapter of what I think the chapters will consist of, kind of the big pieces. And then I do about a third of the book, but I don't do much more than that. And the reason is that when you write a book, it can take, 6 months, a year, 2 years, depending. And I find that there's so many ideas that you actually get while you're writing the book. Day to day, you could be walking down the street and you just have this brainstorm. Oh man, that would be really great. And so my opinion is if you outline too much, then you get in the way of that kind of natural story building over time. You don't want to, because the longer that you spend writing, the more the story takes on a life of its own. And you don't want to get in the way of that. And so when I talk to writer groups and things, that's kind of what I tell them is that, outlining is fine, but make sure that you're not going to pigeonhole yourself because there's a lot of ideas that are going to come during the process. So that's kind of what I do is I'll have about a third of it and I've got a pretty good idea and then I'll start going from there.
I think when we ask this question, I think most pantsers, and including me, they actually have a lot of scenes in mind. They kind of have a loose feel for where the story's going to go. It's just they don't know how they're going to get there. And that's
Right.
how I start with a scene, just start writing, see what happens. I'm working on my first historical novel right now. And I thought, well, I really, really better outline this. And then I thought, well, I really don't want to. Don't make me go to school today, mommy. I got a
Right.
stomach
Yeah.
ache. And so I said, just start writing, and then you can always start an outline later. Well, I'm nearly 30,000 words into it and I haven't outlined yet and it's rolling. So I guess old habits are hard to beat. So
Yeah. Well,
that's
and
the end
look,
of the day.
everybody's got a different style, right? I mean, there's
Exactly.
nothing wrong with the free flowing because a lot of what I
Yep,
do
yep, yep.
ends up
And
free
it makes it
flowing.
more fun, I think. But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I outline, but I'm really flexible with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
changes.
yeah,
In fact, the last outline I did for the historical I've been working on um, was so long and so detailed, it's probably 3 books.
yeah,
I mean, by the time you start fleshing it out and all
Yeah,
that
well,
stuff.
and that gets to be really exciting, right? Because that's another thing that I tell these writers. I'm like, don't ever end a book in a way that you can't write a sequel,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
because
Don't
it
kill
doesn't
the hero.
necessarily mean you don't want to be have it be a cliffhanger because people hate that, but you always want to leave that door open because it might be a massive hit. So if you have what Kathy's saying, if you actually have ideas about book two and three, that's amazing. That is
Yeah,
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, of course. So I want to circle back real quick, because I know you went into IT, correct? So
Yeah.
you're obviously one of those unusual people that's both right and left brain. So what did you go to college for? Did you go for computer science or
You,
and
you know, it's I went to my major in college was organizational behavior, which is like business psychology, with a minor in telecommunications. Um, don't know if I ever really used much of it, but what was interesting is, yeah, so I spent my whole career in IT for 30 years almost, 25, 30 years.
so
And
when did you
then,
pull the trigger to go ahead and start writing and why did you pull the
well, it's
trigger?
kind of a funny story. So, my first book, Breakthrough, I wrote, and that has a large tech side to it where it's a story about some marine biologists who use a supercomputer to break the language barrier between humans and dolphins. And for the very first time in history, they have a real conversation with dolphins. And what they learn is both really exciting and very frightening. But there's the computer system, the supercomputer system that they use to do that. So there is it's kind of a multi-genre, but there are some technology in it that that was helped because I was in IT, so I already knew all that stuff. So I wrote that really as kind of a bucket list. Um, my girls were young, they'd go to bed at 8, and I'd spend 2 hours, surfing the net doing nothing. And I thought, I got to do something constructive. And I had this idea in my head, heard about this Kindle thing where you could self-publish. And I'll give it a shot. And so I just started writing. Luckily, it turned out to be a cool story, and people liked it. And so they wanted everybody wanted a sequel, and then I'd written a couple of other stories, other genres. I figured, hopefully one of those will kind of stick, and it turned out to be the first one, and that's what got going. And it was probably I started learning about advertising and marketing. It was in the early days, and things were picking up. And I wrote, I want to say, so the Breakthrough series is 6 books. And I was still working when I was writing them. I think the fourth book I wrote entirely on the BART train, going in and out of the city. And
Lots of
that
us
was,
doing that now.
yeah, that was difficult because it was 45 minutes into the city where I would work, and then it was 45 minutes out. And so, to your point, Kath, is having to switch back and forth between being at work and being logical, and then being on the train and being creative. It was really hard, but after about a month, I kind of got into a groove. So anyway, the books kind of took off, and I was doing pretty well, and I got to a point where I was making about as much off the books as I was off my salary, which was incredible. And then one day, it was a Friday before Father's Day. I want to say it was 2016, maybe. I was talking to a VP in our company. She ran the Rochester, New York office. Great gal named Erin. I've known her for years. We were both VPs, and so we work a lot in the company. And um, she was having a problem with her computer, and I was trying to fix it. And we were laughing and carrying on. She's a great personality, really smart, great family. Um, Anyway, I said, "Hey, Aaron, I'm gonna have to call you back on Monday because I gotta look up this issue." And she goes, "Oh, no problem." So we hung up, and then 2 days later, she was dead.
Ooh.
She uh, she had an event, a health. I think it was and she was like 44.
Oh,
She had
geez.
kind of a health issue, and she died on
Wow.
Father's Day, and her kids found her on the grass. It was horrible. I mean, everybody was absolutely devastated. I mean, devastated. Just beautiful woman, smart, funny, just a great personality. And so I was married at the time, and it occurred to me that, when we're younger, when we lose somebody, it kind of rolls off our backs a little easier. When we're older, it's a bit more of a clarion call. When we're like, wait a minute, this could happen to anybody at any time. It could be a car accident, it could be a lightning strike, I mean, who knows, right? And so I'd gone home and I had talked to my wife at the time and I said, hey, look, we're doing well with the books. We've paid off all of our debt. We've got a lot of savings. I mean, if I'm ever going to take a shot at being like a full-time writer, I mean, why not now? And if it doesn't work out, I can just get another job. And so I went in on Monday and I told my boss, I'm out. And he was a great guy, stuck around for a couple months to make sure everything went smooth. And I took the leap, and luckily it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a
Such a
long
great
story,
story.
long answer to your question, but it's kind of a fun story.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a
let's
great
let's
story.
talk about your new series that
Yes.
that you have, and this great cover app, by the way.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, it's
Uh, yeah, so Rollback is kind of a really interesting story on two sides. One is, again, there's a technological component. And there's a couple things that I think that we have a couple big problems in society that get kind of contributed to this. One is that I don't know about you guys, but my daughters can't get off their phones. Most people I know honestly can't get off their phones. People are absolutely addicted to their phones.
I saw where Australia just limited all that.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Everybody under 16, all the social media is off limits to them now. I
I
don't
think
know
it's
how they're going to technologically do it, but
I think it's a great idea. I
yeah,
think, I was at the gym the other day and this, gal is taking pictures of her. People are all the
yeah,
selfies.
exactly.
And I was reading that over 1 billion pictures now every day
Yeah.
are taken. Actually, probably more than that, probably a couple billion taken every day and uploaded to the cloud. And so the story is about a guy, an entrepreneur, tech guy, who figures out a way to tap into these archives. And there's something called image stitching. It's a technology that's been around for a while where you can actually take different pictures and overlap them. And if they've got the same pixels, like if Kathy took a picture of this building and I took a picture of the same building like a year later, that it would actually find and overlap them automatically because of the matching pixels. And it's just been around for a long time, and now it's a lot more sophisticated. And so, the idea is that you can actually take all these pictures and create a snapshot, a snapshot of the world at any given time by overlapping everybody's pictures. And
Wow.
so this is what this guy ends up doing, and he does it for a very sad and personal reason. And he finds a guy who helps him find something that he's looking for. The other plot line that's really kind of cool is that I was talking to my mom a while back. We have a lot of deep conversations. We were going on a walk, and she's 85, and she said, Mike, one of the hardest things about getting old is becoming invisible to society." And I was thinking, it's very true. And I talked to a lot of people, and they all verify that. And I thought, what if that could be an asset? And so part of the story is that the guy that this tech guy hires to help him find stuff, he's been doing stuff for a long time, helping, finding people. And it turns out that he actually has a secret group of senior citizens that have been helping him. Because, I mean, as we get older, there's the old phrase that says, when an old person dies, the world loses a library. And I think it's totally
Hmm.
true, right? And so there's so many people that even if they're healthy, even if they can't get around, they're still sharp. They've got a lifetime of experience and a lifetime of wisdom, and they want to do something with it. And so the story is about this kind of secret underground group, kind of a network of people that are older, they've retired, and they've got all this knowledge and they're using it. to do stuff that nobody has any idea, and nobody pays attention to them. So anyway, those kind of two things tied together is cool story. Roll back.
Love that.
I love it. That is what an incredible concept.
So
Yeah.
tell, I know I love it. So tell our viewers where they can learn more about you and where they can get your books.
I'm primarily, it's funny. I'm not a big social media guy. I've got a Facebook account. You can find me on Facebook. My website is michaelgrumley.com. So that's pretty easy to find. Or you can go to Amazon, you type in Grumley, Grumley, and I come up right away. So it's easy to find, the books and stuff there. But yeah, everybody really kind of digs the concept, and so they're excited. The second book just came out last month, and everybody can't wait for the third one. So it seems like this has got some legs. So we'll see what happens.
Oh,
Cool.
so exciting. Well, thank you for being here. You are a great interview. We're going to have you back. I know you're very prolific, so you could be kind of a regular. We can
There you go.
back off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
I
trust me,
can
I'll
tell
come
you,
up with
I
even
can
better
tell you
questions.
lots of mistakes not to make.
Well, that's helpful too.
That
So,
is
Doug,
true.
I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much for being here. It's a lot of fun. And I'm going to pick up the book. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to pick up the book and read it. And I am going to pick up the second one too. What a great concept.
There's a money back guarantee. If you don't like it, Doug, I'll send you some money back.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Or buy me a bourbon sometime.
Yeah, there you go.
And we're
Absolutely.
even. You got it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Uh, well, thanks for being here, and we really appreciate it. And I know the viewers will love it too. Well, that wraps up this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series. And as you know, we will be back with other interviews soon. And until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and try not to get caught.